Good evening, everyone. It's Friday night. Welcome to Cherries Red Army. It's another match preview, and your football weekend starts right here. Tomorrow afternoon, AFC Bournemouth take on their rivals, not rivals, Southampton in a derby, not derby, in the FA Cup quarter-final. Thank you to everyone currently joining us live on our streaming platforms. You know you can take part in the chat. Let us know what you think throughout the show. Drop the comments, and we'll show as many as we can on the screen. Also, if you enjoy the content in the next 30 or so minutes, give this video a like, and if you're not a subscriber yet, please do that as well. Right, let's get my first guest on, a former youth team academy manager at AFC Bournemouth, a general love for the town, and more recently a manager for Leyton Orient. Please welcome Ross Embleton. How are you?
I'm good, thank you, Kirk. Thanks for having me on, mate.
So, as I said, a former sort of working at AFC Bournemouth a few years ago. I mean, tell us a little bit more about how it came about, you working for the club.
I was working at Tottenham and got to know, through my Leyton Orient connections, got to know Sean Brooks really well. And obviously at one stage their promotion between him and Paul Groves meant they went in with the first team, and I came down and went through an interview process with regards to becoming a youth team manager. Absolutely love the place. It's my go-to place. I think in the world, to be honest, as drastic as that might sound, I might not have travelled enough, but going down to Bournemouth as soon as I get the opportunity, since I've been a kid, it's always been a place that I loved. So it was a no-brainer for me and the family to jump into the opportunity. Unfortunately for me, I think during some different times, I suppose, for the club, could really feel the direction that it was about to go in. But Eddie and Jason come back, and I had a real good opportunity of a couple of months working around and seeing what they were all about. But quickly, Paul and Sean came back into the academy, and I was back on the road to London, to be honest, and I lost my job. So, excuse me, very unfortunate, very disappointed that it ended the way that it did, because I loved working at the club and living down there. But I suppose everything happens for a reason is one way to look at it anyway.
We'll take a look at your recent career a little bit later at the end of the show, but thanks for coming on. And let's get our second guest on. So for the opposition, a former Southampton player, played over 300 appearances, defender. Please welcome Jason Dodd. How you doing, Jason?
Yeah, Kirk, I'm good. How you doing? Well, good to see you guys.
And just elaborate again on your career at Southampton, and sort of what are you doing nowadays, Jason?
I work at Winchester College. I got a football club, Proco Football. So I'm doing little bits here and there, if I'm honest with you. My day job is obviously working at Winchester College. I run the football program up there. I do a bit of cricket. I do a bit of golf. I'm sure Ross will be a little bit gutted now when I'm talking about the golf. But yeah, it's a great place. It's a wonderful place to work. The facilities are amazing. The kids are great. So, you know what I mean? I'm enjoying it at the moment. I got one more week left, and I got 3 weeks holiday, so it's quite nice.
Fantastic. Great to hear. Cheers for coming on, Jason. Let's get stuck into the football. We will look at the FA Cup in more detail. Let's have a conversation about the elephant in the room then. I'll start with you, Jason. Is this a derby match?
Well, of course it is. It's 30 miles between the two clubs. The only problem is, more or less from Bournemouth's point of view, obviously we got the lovely Portsmouth just down the road that is more or less classed as obviously the South Coast derby. But yeah, I see it like that. Like I said, as Ross was saying earlier, it's a lovely place to come to. My mum lives down in, my mother-in-law just down the road. So we're down in Bournemouth all the time. So it's a really nice place to come to. So I would class it as a derby. When I played, there wasn't too many games that we had, but we used to come down a lot pre-season and play pre-season games. As a player, it was great because you own in 45 minutes. So it's quite nice.
Ross, do you look at it as a derby, a little bit more of an outsider maybe?
Yeah, no, I agree with Jason there. I think obviously when you've got a rivalry as strong as Southampton and Portsmouth, it's very, very difficult. But I think at the same time, where Bournemouth are and where they've been in recent times, the clashes against Southampton, Jason said, that is not inundated with the amount of games between each other. So it creates that little bit of an opportunity to create that little bit more of a rivalry between the two teams. And I suppose the more you play against a particular team not too far away, the rivalries develop. But like I say, you can't be overshadowed by being anywhere near what Portsmouth Southampton is. So I think it's just safe to sort of call it a derby and and understand that there's a little bit more nicety between the two teams.
We'll get stuck into the form of both teams this season, but let's look at the previous matches. And on Sunday, I think it was, Jason, Southampton lost at home to Brighton. They're struggling at the moment, and they've had 5 or 6 days break now until this match coming up tomorrow. I mean, what's your take on that performance last week?
Yeah, no, I did the radio, and like I said, they are struggling. We can't moan about it. I mean, Southampton, if they get their best 11 players out there, they can compete with the best in the Premier League. The problem is when they lose 2 or 3 through injury and suspension, then I don't know why they really struggle. You look at the Premiership now, and most of the sides in the Premiership have 2 players per position. The problem is at Southampton, when they do lose 1 or 2 of those players, the players that are coming in my opinion, are not at the standard of the other boys. So that's where they have really struggled. I mean, 2-3 months ago, top of the table, you're thinking this could be one of the best seasons ever for Southampton. And God knows what has happened. They just more or less, I mean, yes, injuries and suspensions and things like this, but tell me a football club that doesn't have these problems.
For Bournemouth, inconsistent form at the moment, Ross. A couple of wins, draws, losses in there, but in the week, a big match to try and stay in touch with playoffs. A 3-0 comfortable win in the end against Swansea. Although we haven't got as much rest as Southampton, that's surely got to be a big result going into tomorrow's game.
I think it's a massive boost. Obviously, last weekend would have been extremely disappointing, wouldn't it? Because of the opposition, the state of the table, the position that both clubs found themselves in. It was a big game, and obviously to be on the wrong end of that result. So there needed to be a reaction, and it was a great opportunity to bounce back. Obviously, really tough opposition in terms of going up against Swansea, but in terms of the start to the game and the end of the first half, they score at really good times, don't they? And it obviously makes it really difficult for Swansea to bounce back in the second half. So it gives them a real lift, and I'm sure they'll be looking forward to the game at the weekend.
Like Ross said, I mean, Bournemouth are probably high in confidence. That break, Jason, does that really affect you, or does it mean you can actually get stuck into what went wrong against Brighton and focus on trying to put that right on Saturday?
Well, Kurt, to be fair, they've had 2 months to try and put it right because they've had lots of games. You look at Southampton, and to be fair, when they played Brighton as well, those 2 teams were they've lost so many points from being in a leading position, and you suddenly start thinking, what's the mentality of you're winning games, and then all of a sudden, I think Southampton have lost 21, 22 points from winning positions. And you're thinking, you're not having a dig now at the staff and things like that, but you're thinking surely that's an area that they've been focusing on to find out what it is. Everyone knows when you go behind, it becomes a little bit easier because in theory, you're behind in the game. Everyone expects you to lose the game. What worries me about Southampton is that they're hit and miss. They have great 45 minutes or they might have a great game, and then the next game, they just seem to be just missing something. And I don't know what it is. Have they got enough leaders on the park? I'm not too sure. When things start to go wrong, you need someone then to dig a few people out and get them going again. I'm not too sure whether they've got that. And the worrying thing is when they do concede 1 goal or they're winning the game they concede, then they tend to go on to lose the game. So it's a real worry for me. And like you said, from 2.5 months ago, Ralph was getting spoken about as going on and maybe going into one of the top 6. I mean, now you're going to be scratching your head to understand where we've got to in a short pace of time.
The head-to-head between the teams does sort of favour Southampton, but if we look at both fixtures from last season in the Premier League, a 3-1 win away from home for AFC Bournemouth, the first time they've ever won at St Mary's. Would they take that as confidence that they can beat Southampton on their day, Ross?
I think a lot's changed, doesn't it? A lot, they'll look at that and it'll give you a belief that you can go to a place like that and get a result. So I think that obviously helps the players that would have been in and around the team or on that day, but I don't know if it has an incredible impact because circumstances would have changed so much.
At home for Bournemouth, after Project Restart, Jason, Southampton came to town. They missed a penalty on the day, but they won 2-0. VAR was involved as well and will be involved tomorrow. I mean, that result for Southampton at Vitality, and they have quite a good record, I believe.
Kurt, let's not talk VAR, mate. I mean, let's just bring the show down when we start talking about that. No, but like you said, Bournemouth thoroughly deserved the victory at St Mary's, and I think obviously Southampton ground the victory down at the Vitality. But I just think, as Ross was saying, that the clubs are in two different places at the moment. Bournemouth are desperate to try and get back up. They've had changes in the football club, which happens. And you're expecting a reaction. I'm sure Jonathan expecting them to react from that. But like I said, it's a game where, in my opinion, I think Southampton are the favourites. If Bournemouth to win the game, then in theory it would be a shock. It would be an FA Cup shock as such. So from Southampton's point of view, they're going to be under pressure to go down there. Bournemouth have got nothing to lose. Everyone's expecting Southampton to win. And the thing is, you look around the Bournemouth camp and they got some really good players there. So if Southampton don't turn up with their A game, it could cause a few problems for them. And like I said, even if Southampton go into the lead, that doesn't really mean that they're going to go on and finish the game off.
So to add to that, I think Southampton are unbeaten at the Vitality Stadium in the last 4 visits, and the last time Bournemouth did win at home was a 2-0 result in 2016, I think. Let's look at both teams' form this season, and you've touched on it a bit, Jason. December the 19th, Southampton were 3rd in the Premier League and Bournemouth were 2nd. I mean, let's talk on that flying start at the start of the season then, Jason. I mean, why did they have such a good start up to December the 19th?
Flipping out. If I knew that, I'd be in there now, mate. I mean, and we wouldn't be talking about that. I don't know. Like I said, I've spoken a lot. Luckily, I'm enough to do. I do the radio. I think Ralph had a consistent 11. So I really think, from Southampton's point of view, when they had Ryan Bertram on the left, they had Carl Walker-Peters on the right. These two would bomb on. They had more or less. I like to say he plays a 4-2-2-2, whatever that means. But he had more or less the offensive players that were very narrow that came inside. So we were a real threat going outside, but through the middle as well. Those picked up a few injuries, and they had younger players coming into the game, which were new to the positions. And really, it just nullified what Southampton were about. And I think that's a worry for me that, in theory, they're a Premiership club and they have got money. They should be having players that can cover if someone gets injured. That's a worry. So you mentioned earlier about obviously who's going to play tomorrow. Romeo, I think, is a massive, massive blow to Southampton. He links up the play. He's one of those that goes unnoticed just because he does things like, not being rude to supporters, but people that are in the game and coaches, they know the work that he does. So he goes under the radar a little bit. And I think they've really missed him. And obviously with goals being missed, Shea Adams is doing terrific, but they're not scoring enough goals. And I just think it worries me that they go to the Vitality tomorrow and they're expected to go and win the game. Because I'm not overly confident that they've got the squad of players, as in the 11 that's going to start tomorrow, that's going to turn over Bournemouth.
A lot of change for Bournemouth in the summer, Ross. Eddie Howe went out, Jason Tindall took over. A quick turnaround from the season before going into this season, and Bournemouth hit the ground running, 10 wins, 7 draws, as I said, 2nd in the league, December the 19th. I mean, was it just the talent in that squad that hit the ground running at the start?
Well, I think if you can keep a nucleus of your group together, you're always going to have an opportunity that if you can get your circumstances right, if you can be organised as you start the season, you give yourself the opportunity to hit the ground running and to dominate games and dominate teams with the quality of the players that you got. I think what starts to happen after that is you become the focus, don't you, in the league? You already would have been, as Bournemouth come into the league. People have already got an eye on the Premier League clubs and raising their games for that. So there then becomes that sustainability factor where teams come or you go away from home, you're the away team, and they come out to just make life difficult for you, and it becomes a whole new challenge. You turn up thinking a team have got one particular plan, and they go about it in another way because you're Bournemouth, and you're probably only one of 3 teams that get looked upon like that in the league. Maybe 1 or 2 more that have got aspirations to get out of it. So it then starts to make it difficult, and then obviously any managerial change then makes it a little bit uncertain, because in the season you've got to start adapting and fitting in with a new way of going about things. But at the same time, this season's even tougher doing that in terms of the timescales that people have got to get their messages across.
Speed it up to where we are now then, Jason. After Christmas, I think it's only 2 wins in 17. There's a 9-0 loss in there as well. It's concerning form for Southampton. I think 5 points off relegation.
Yeah, I knew you were going to mention the 9-0, Kirk, as well.
I had to throw it in there.
Didn't you? But no, like you said, I mean, they beat Liverpool, I think, early January, which was a fantastic result. And obviously the other game, which you look at where the league table is now, Sheffield United only a couple of weeks ago, Fulham are playing this evening. Fulham get a result tonight. People are going to be looking over their shoulder. Like the Brighton game, for me, it's just a sad thing to say, but it was a 6-pointer, as simple as that, because Brighton would then close the gap. I think the only good thing from Southampton's point of view is, I don't need to be rude, but I just think Fulham have got too much to get back. Like I said, they've done remarkably well to get slowly chipping away at it. Obviously, Newcastle are in the mix. I really do think Southampton were very lucky that they had the very good start to the season, because I'm not too sure. They talk about teams that can get out of a relegation. I'm not too sure whether Southampton, if obviously Fulham win this evening, Newcastle get result, Brighton keep getting results, whether they've got the players that are used to being. I'm not saying that they're not good players. I'm saying they're not used to being in a relegation battle. Luckily, I'm just talking my experience. I was in it a lot. So what does that tell you about me? But what I'm saying is, obviously, it is a different mentality. You're going out there, and maybe it is because we've got some really good players at Southampton. There's no crowds there. So do they feed off the crowd? A lot of the players that I played with, we feed off probably the abuse that we were getting, and that would get us going and push us on to get the results. So I think, is that having an effect on some of the players at the moment? But I just think, as you mentioned, Kirk, because they had such a good start to the season, if we hadn't have had that, we'd have been really in trouble. But I just think that we have the edge, and the other teams, I don't think are going to have the quality to get the points they needed to overtake us.
Bournemouth's form, Ross, no better since the turn of Christmas. Jonathan Woodgate's taken over now. Jason Tindall lost his job. These teams have a similar pattern in what's happened this season, although different in different leagues.
Yeah, and I think there's obviously been a lot. Jason's made some really good points and sees Southampton a lot more than I do. I think what really I find eye-opening this year is the different impact it has on different squads. I think Bournemouth have got a very good squad for the level that they're at, and I think it's been that unsettled, that disruption during the back end of Jason's time and in the change of manager that makes it difficult. But looking at it from a Southampton perspective, the squads are so important this time around. And as Jason alluded to there about the finances within the club and being able to go and supply the level of players that they need, but clearly they probably haven't got that depth this year. So they come out the traps, hit the ground running, looked a really good team, and then for me, it just looks like the legs have gone on them a little bit, and then it makes it really difficult with such a hectic program. But going back to Bournemouth, it's obviously been an indifferent time for Jonathan Woodgate since he took over, but you would like to think that that big result during midweek would give them a real opportunity to kick on and look forward and just make that playoff place or a little bit more realistic before the end of the season. But it's certainly going to be tough now because there's a number of teams around them doing so.
When I look at the stats between the teams and you throw in it's the FA Cup, I look at it as quite a level playing field. But Jason, you just still edging Southampton.
Of course I am. They're in the Premiership, Kirk. Come on, let's get realistic now. I'm being honest. I'm not dissing Bournemouth by any chance of the imagination. But in theory, Southampton, like I said, if Bournemouth get a result, it would be fantastic. Don't be one for Bournemouth. And it would be a cup upset. I'm looking at the Southampton squad, and you were mentioned earlier about the players. They're missing a couple, but in my opinion, I mean, okay, they're missing Danny, which is goals, but the vast majority of the players should be stepping up to the mark. I mean, I know it sounds silly. This is not being rude about Bournemouth, but when the quarter-final draw was made, a couple of my mates are Southampton supporters, and I'm being honest, they ain't got a clue what they're talking about. But they were made up just because for them, that's not being disrespectful to Bournemouth, but for them, it was like flipping out. There's an opportunity to get to a semi-final. But the thing is, what they don't understand, Ross has been in the game long enough. that's all well and good, but I mean, you've got to go out on the park and win the game. And this is what I mean. It gives Bournemouth a great opportunity. Southampton are expected to win. Us as supporters, we're expecting them to go there. I don't think it'll be a comfortable victory, but I think they'll have the edge to get the result. But there's still, in the back of your mind, there is that opportunity, because Southampton's form is not great, that they might not turn up on the day.
Thank you to everyone who's joined us right now. We're at halftime stage of this show. Let us know what you think throughout the show, and I'll drop as many comments as possible. This is a 20-second gap for you to make sure you like this video and subscribe if you haven't already. We're going to take a look at how these teams have both got to the quarterfinals. So we'll start with the opposition first, and I'll just show it on a banner at the bottom of the screen. So you got there for a third round win at 2-0 versus Shrewsbury, a 1-0 win versus Arsenal, and a 2-0 win versus Wolves. Jason, what I take from that is you haven't conceded a goal yet in this competition.
No, that's been a bonus. And you take them last two games. Following those games, they played them in the league, obviously at the weekend after they'd done them. So they did the business in the FA Cup and then got turned over in the league. So it goes back to what I said. You never know what is going to happen. The manager, which I think is great, he's not changed the side too much. There's a lot of sides in the FA Cup, and I understand why they do that. They give the younger players a chance, or the squad players a chance to play. I think Ralph has gone, look, we want to go further in this competition. And he has played strong sides in all the game. I'll be really disappointed tomorrow if he doesn't put the strongest side possible out, because I really do feel that there's an opportunity for them to get through to the semi-finals.
Ross, Bournemouth started the competition in the third round and they won 4-1 versus Oldham, 2-1 against a Crawley team that gave a lot of heart, and the biggest win of the competition so far is an away win, 2-0 versus Burnley. I think that was second game for Jonathan Woodgate, caretaker charge. He didn't really throw any youngsters in. He went full throttle with a full team. I mean, was you surprised with a 2-0 win over Burnley?
I think I wouldn't say necessarily. Well, yeah, it's a surprise really, because Burnley go about their business and do, and they're competitive. Whatever team they put out, whatever way they approach it. I actually watched the Crawley game because we weren't too far behind playing Crawley after that, and I know we've obviously a number of Bournemouth connections. It gave Crawley a little bit of another reason to come and try to cause an upset, but they got through that fairly comfortably on the night, despite the scoreline. They looked fairly comfortable within the game. But I think what the Burnley game shows, and what the two games for Southampton against Arsenal and Wolves shows, is what Jason said on a number of occasions already tonight, is that the one thing the FA Cup does is it throws up surprises. And do you expect Southampton to go and turn Arsenal over? Probably not. The Wolves game's probably a little bit more in the balance, but it shows that if you don't go to somewhere with the right attitude or go into the game with the right focus, that you can get turned over.
Ross, AFC Bournemouth have never made a semi-final of an FA Cup. Is that pressure, or is that, like Jason says, got nothing to lose?
I think it's that for me. I think that's how I would be approaching it. Of, again, how much of the real history would the players be totally aware of about not getting there? But they certainly would be made aware of it, I'm sure, this week in the media, etc., that they've never got to that. But I think it's a case of sending them out there with that freedom to go and express themselves and try and create a little bit of history, and then once you get there, we see them, over the years, but anyone can end up getting to the final. And in recent times, Millwall, clubs like that get to the FA Cup final. It's a fantastic thing. So I think once you get to those latter stages, anything can happen, and it could be an incredible year for the club if that were to be the case.
Ross, we'll have a look at the potential lineup for AFC Bournemouth tomorrow. There is an international break coming, but if you look at it from the board's point of view, could a potential another game be a distraction against 2.5 million, or getting as far as you can in the FA Cup, versus trying to get in those playoffs, which we are now in touching distance again after the win in the week? I mean, that's 100 million. I mean, does that play a part from the board?
I think it would do. And let's get it right now. I think the board and everybody else associated with the club, if you gave them a choice out of the two now, they'd have chosen to get back into the Premier League. So I think it goes without saying. But I think at the same time, what this does allow is a real opportunity to give people a a chance to play. It might not be wholesale. I think it might be 1, 2, maybe 3 changes in the team to give people a platform to go and create some more competition for places between now and the end of the season. You've already said he doesn't appear to do that, Jonathan Woodgate, with the youngsters a great deal, but there might be an opportunity and a passage, a pathway into the team for people to go and make their mark. So I think you can dress it up from all different angles and say, oh, it's a distraction because of this. But at the same time, I think as a manager and a group of players, you'd be going into it looking at it as an incredible opportunity and to try and make the most of it.
A bit differently for Southampton, Jason. You have had a final. Did Southampton win in 76? I think you've had a final in 02, 03. And most recently, I think you got to the semis in 16, 17. So you've been there before, done it, sort of?
Well, I'm glad you reminded me, mate. Yeah, I didn't play in the 76 before you ask. I was injured in 2003, so I was devastated I didn't play in that. But yeah, I mean, these are things for players. Like you've got the opportunity, whilst it's spot on, you've got an opportunity to get to a semi-final of the FA Cup. Now, there ain't too many players that are going to be able to be having a drink with their mates and talking about that. So it's a fantastic opportunity. And don't get me wrong, players talk about it. Of course they do. And their mates will be talking to them because their mates will be asking them for tickets and all sorts. So it will be getting mentioned, as simple as that. The only thing is, if you get too far ahead of yourself, from a Southampton point of view, I'm being honest, we're expected to get through to get to the semi-final. But then again, sometimes it comes and bites you in the bum a little bit. The expectation, players don't perform on the day. Bournemouth turn up and they get there and they've got very good players that suddenly turn it on. They can score goals from all sorts. They've got the quality of players to do that. So you're just hoping from a Southampton point of view that they go there with the mentality, look, let's get the game. This is the game in front of us. Let's get this game out of the way. Let's win this game. Then you can look ahead, hopefully, to maybe get into the semi-final.
We talked about the pressures of balancing the FA Cup with the playoffs. Is Ralph in trouble? Is he under pressure?
Well, I'm not going to say that, mate, because I want to go to the semi-final. I want to well, you tell me. Like I said, would he sound? I would hope not. I would hope that the club are looking for long term. Like I said, it's like when you had Eddie and Jason at Bournemouth. It was the longer term. You're going to go through some ups and downs. That's just not. There's very few managers and coaches and that suddenly have a career that's just steady inclines and everyone does really well. You're going to get some bumps along the way, and I think Southampton are going on that bump at the moment. As simple as that. But the things in football turn around so quickly. Southampton being talked about as that they're struggling a little bit. Well, they win on Saturday. They're in a semi-final, and in theory, they stay in the Premier League. I'm sure most supporters at the start of the season would have taken a 50-50 chance to get to a cup final and, okay, be disappointed with where they're going to finish in the Premier League. But the most important thing is, as Bournemouth and the fans and the players know, they're still in the Premier League.
Let's look at a player availability then for Southampton. Some big players missing for you tomorrow, Jason. Romeo's out, Walcott, Danny Ings, Obafemi, and I think Minamino's cup-tied. There's some match winners there.
You love to drop the in code, didn't you? Just to say there's not too many boys to come back in. The only good thing, you got obviously Shea Adams, you got Stuart Armstrong, who's in decent form. Minamino, to be fair, him coming down from Liverpool, he scored a couple of goals. I think he's struggling for the way that Liverpool played to suit to the way that Southampton's playing. Nathan Redmond, I really like him. He gets a lot of stick from Southampton fans, but I think he's really positive. Okay, there's some areas where he needs to work at his final delivery, but they have got quality in there. James Ward-Prowse, Diallo, I think, is a young lad that's come in, done really well. Teller. So they've got some decent ones in there. It'd just be interesting to see how Ralph sets up, whether he goes with his 4-2-2-2. Hopefully Ryan's fit. Carl Walker-Peters is fit, because those, my opinion, they're a really good force going forward, and they're probably one of the best pairs in the Premier League, because they do give a threat on the offensive side. So I'm hoping Shea Adams is in good form. He's scoring goals. I'm just not too sure who's going to play alongside him.
Ross, you're a manager. If you're Woodgate tonight, are you thinking, don't give away a 25-yard free kick outside the box with Ward-Prowse around?
I was a manager. No, I think without doubt, Jesus. I mean, if there's one player probably in the Premier League, certainly at one stage, it was like giving away a penalty, wasn't it? With the form that he was in and the way that he hits them, I think he's as good as there is for me around at the moment. You know, we think back for recent years and looking at people like Beckham, etc., and he's as good as any of them. So it would be something that certainly you would be highlighting. I think you wouldn't need to highlight a great deal because players will be fully aware of how dangerous he'll be. So, but it's certainly one thing you need to cross off your list of threats is to make sure that set pieces are kept to a minimum. That's within shooting distance and crossing areas because his delivery is second to none.
Jason, it's been brilliant to have you on for Southampton. I mean, what are you expecting from the team tomorrow? And do you have a score prediction?
Yeah, it's going to be 2-0, mate. It's going to be comfortable. We're going to get to the semi-final. No, I'm looking forward to the game. We're going to be watching it. Like I said, I do think it's going to be a tight game. I'm just hoping that Southampton have the slight quality that is going to get them over the line, but it's not going to be a comfortable game. As you mentioned earlier, it's a rivalry, it's a derby. I mean, these are the games. I imagine the players will know each other and that as well. So I think there's going to be that that they're wanting to get some over on people that they know as well. But I'm sure it's going to be both teams play really great football. I'm just hoping that Southampton are going to get over the line.
I hope you enjoy the game tomorrow, Jason. Thanks for coming on. I appreciate it and wish you all the best for the future.
Thank you. Good luck, Ross.
Take care, Jason.
Cheers, mate.
Cheers, Jason. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Really interesting to have Jason there. Some really good input for the opposition. Ross, there's extra time and penalties potentially tomorrow with how that changes with COVID restricting more fixtures, etc. I mean, is that exciting or can that be tense?
It's tense. It's a difficult one. I think it's, and I understand why it's in place, and obviously replays, etc. It can't be put in terms of the schedule this year, but it makes it really tough. Neither manager will be wanting that to go to extra time because of the accumulation and turnaround the game so quickly at the moment. They're not going to want those extra minutes out on the pitch. So I'm sure both will be having a right good go to make sure that it doesn't get to that stage because it's they won't want that physically.
Let's take a look then at what potential team Woodgate can pick tomorrow. There are some players out. Let us know in the chat who you think should start, play, or who you would take out. We're going to do this. In the press conference earlier then, it was discussed that David Brooks is still not fit. Junior Stanislas pulled up in the week. Lloyd Kelly is slightly unfit and Jeff Lerma is suspended. So the team on the screen at the moment, Ross, is sort of the team that sort of played from 37 minutes in midweek. Now, I got a feeling he might just go with this. I mean, Roro got some minutes and played well. I mean, do you think that team will be, pretty close?
Yeah, I do. I suppose the big question we've obviously you've posed it a few times tonight in different ways is obviously trying to identify what the priorities are. And I agree with you. I think it will be very, very similar to this. I suppose the question marks that I threw out in preparation for tonight would be what he does with Wiltshire. Does he continue to have him in the team? I think it makes sense that he is. Not calling for him to be taken out by any way, shape or form, but it's one to consider in terms of time and minutes. So that might be, even if he starts, something that has to be taken into consideration. And then I did wonder whether or not there might be opportunities for one or two, like a Mepham, who I know his form's been indifferent this year, but it's an opportunity to give him time on the pitch to see if he can turn that more into a more positive nature. And then I did wonder about Solanke or whether Surridge at some stage might get time out there. But I think if he's really going for it and he's really looking to continue, it will be off the back of something very, very close to this team.
And some people are highlighting there are some youngsters that can potentially come in. I just think it might be a bit of a risk. And with the international break, there isn't a concern that there's another championship game around the corner. But potentially players like Jordan Samora, like Jayden Anthony as well. Do you think there's potential they could come off the bench?
Potential, I think, is the key question. I think you said already tonight that it's not been something that he has really done to a great level with the young players in the squad. So that you have to look at those trends and realise that potentially that might not be the line that he goes down. But a lot of it will obviously be score dependent. I think a number of those ideas as to whether people come off the bench will depend obviously in the type of team that he goes to start with. So obviously whenever young players are in and around the squad, you want to see them get that opportunity. But like I say, if you follow those trends of how teams have been picked in recent times, it doesn't always look as if Jonathan Woodgate's ready to go down that line just yet.
I know you always keep a keen eye on Bournemouth, and there are players. Is there someone in particular that surprised you this season? I mean, Begovic for me has come back from his AC Milan move. I didn't see his form this season, but is there players like Billing who underperformed in the Premier League? Anyone that stood out for you this season, even in inconsistent form as a team, that have stood out and impressed you?
Well, I think Begovic was one there that certainly I felt similar to what you've said there. I think constantly, like everybody else, waiting for Solanke, waiting for it to happen. And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't quite know what the opinions are on Solanke from a Bournemouth fan's perspective. But when I look at him, I want him to do well. I really want it to click and happen, because his name's been in and around very high level of football in this country for quite a few years now. So you really want the penny to drop and for it to happen to him. For me, like you said there, Billing, I think, has got stronger. And the one that I've been keeping an eye on, not that it directly answers your question, but Cameron Carter-Vickers is someone that I've sort of worked with when he was 11, 12 years of age at Tottenham. So I've always been really keen. I don't think his loan moves have really cracked it just yet. Like a lot of the Tottenham boys that have been successful, he's had a number of loan spells now. So it doesn't mean that they all have to go swimmingly, but I think it's about time for Cameron that he nails down a place in a team, that he gets a real run of games at the level that he's playing at, and pushes on to try to make Bournemouth successful for the rest of the season.
I think I had another guest on a previous show about Carter-Vickers, and they said it's maybe time for him just to find a home. And he has been performing quite well recently, and maybe that might turn into a permanent move.
It's not a bad place to find home, let me tell you.
I know. We'll have you back anytime, Ross. Right, this is your opportunity in the chat. Thank you for everyone who's joined us. As I said, some really good stuff going on. It is your turn to get your predictions in for tomorrow, early predictions, what you think the score will be. So pop them in the chat and I'll start showing them on the screen. Now, Ross, I know it's a match preview for the FA Cup, but I can't get you on and not sort of ask you what it's like to manage in the Football League. I mean, firstly, before we talk about COVID, but probably two different scenarios or circumstances that you took Leyton Orient under. The first one under Justin Edinburgh, which was devastating. And then obviously the second time, which a certain Carl Fletcher went there from Bournemouth, and I think he's back at Bournemouth now. But I mean, give us an insight into that before we talk about like the impact of COVID.
I think managing means that in recent weeks, these bags under my eyes have settled down a little bit. So, obviously, from my perspective, something I never ever planned. And I had done another interview earlier in the week, and someone said to me 2 years ago, what plans would you have been making with regards to trying to become a manager? And it was definitely nothing that I ever wanted to do. I certainly didn't want to do it in the circumstances that I did, in terms of losing Justin. But now it's over and it's finished, and I can look back on a number of different experiences. It's made me much, much stronger. Whatever I choose to do next, whether it was in football, out of football, I think I'd go into it confident because of some of the experiences that I've had. I've managed through some extreme circumstances, as you've said there. So I think if I ever did have another opportunity, or if I went back into another coaching role of some types, that again, it wouldn't be quite so emotional, dramatic, and tough circumstances. So I think I'd be much, much better for the experience. So it's been great in terms of managing a club that I grew up following. I had a season ticket at Leyton Orient. I've done pretty much every job from football in the community all the way through to becoming the head coach. So it's a little bit of a good story, I suppose, to sell to people.
Throw into that COVID. How is it managing players, yourself? I think sometimes fans and people forget that football players, managers, coaches are humans. I mean, how difficult was that, especially maybe at the start of the pandemic?
Well, I think what's important is that a lot of time in football, people forget about what the outside world looks like. And I think what this has done has brought so many different aspects of life together, as dramatic as that might sound. But what's happened is so many people have gone through similar experiences, whether that's losing people, whether that's being stuck at home, whether that's being out at work, whether that's homeschooling. I think what it's done is there's been a real mutual understanding across the board of what everyone can go through in a very similar matter, no matter what walk of life you're in. So I think it would have opened a lot of people's eyes within football and sport as to what the real world actually looks like at times. And you don't underestimate our sort of shut off to the real world. A lot of footballers are. But I think what is important on the flip side of that, without trying to contradict myself, is that for people to understand that footballers are normal people. You know, they have a high profile, they earn good salaries at a certain level of the game, but they are normal people underneath all of that. They have got families, they do have the same concerns. And I think we were hit very early with the COVID restrictions, and it took the enjoyment factor. I don't know if you ever enjoy being a manager, but the enjoyment factor of being in that environment is that you turned up every day. There were so many restrictions, like there is in every other workplace, but it just made the football atmosphere so different. No fans, a lot of the obvious things that people see or are not seeing through football at the moment. But what I've really found was so many people were impacted in so many different ways. Again, like they are in normal life, but we have one or two players that are carefree, come in, what's all this COVID nonsense all about, and want to get on with playing football. And then others have extreme concerns and worries about their family, about their wife's family, about their kids, about how it's going to impact them, about losing people. And I think that's the real big uncertainty, and I suppose the credibility that people need to give to these footballers is that they are also living through that pandemic, and it has an impact on them in a very, very big way. And their workplace is totally different to anything that it's ever been before.
Really, really interesting. Hopefully light at the end of the tunnel, Ross.
Yeah.
Let's get some score predictions for tomorrow then for this big game in the FA Cup. Thank you for joining us. How you doing, Daniel? 9-1. I know Ralph has had a few nines, but confident I would take it. How you doing, Chris? 4-1. Got some confident Cherries here. I'm going for Cherries here. 2-1. Jeff's, how you doing? 2-1.
Jeff is a familiar name, Kirk.
Yeah.
Jeff, keep him well.
He did. I think he did give you a shout out actually earlier on. So yeah, great stuff. Cheers, Jeffs. We've got Heather 4-1. How you doing? Mark 1 with a 2-1 as well. Snap 2-1. 1-1, 2-2. Extra time, Billing, winning penalty. Penalties. Did you ever fancy a pen, Ross?
No, far from it. No, I hate penalty shootouts.
2-2, win on penalties as well. Got another 2-1 in there. Got some more coming. Mark, how you doing? 1-1. Sammy's probably in there somewhere. We got a Sammy. Her name's Sammy. She's a Cherries fan and she likes a 3-1. She's probably thrown it in somewhere. So 2-1 for Aaron as well. I'm sorry if I've missed it, Sammy, but the famous 3-1 I'm sure you're going for. Ross, it's been really good to have you on. I mean, you're going to be able to watch this game tomorrow. I mean, what's your score prediction?
I certainly will get to watch the game. I've got nothing else to do at the moment. My score prediction will be 1-0 tomorrow, and I will make sure that I watch the game. That is 1-0 to Bournemouth.
And Jeff has said, good to see you, Ross.
Yeah, good man.
So, yeah, Ross, no, really appreciate this. I mean, what I know you sort of highlighted it, you're sort of reviewing stuff. Is it time with the family and then have a look at pre-season? And I mean, what's the future?
Yeah, I suppose with football, you can, one, never say never, and two, you can never always quite predict when or what opportunities are going to come up. So I think for me, because I've mentioned there about all the different jobs I've had in football in general, I can keep an open mind to it. I don't feel as though I desperately have to be a manager again. Like I said, I would like to have a try, but that doesn't have to be tomorrow. It could be in another 5 or 10 years. So we'll see where and what happens. So fingers crossed it does reveal itself sooner rather than later.
I know you've told me as well, Ross, you are desperate to get back to the beach, aren't you?
Too right I am.
Some love out there for you then, Ross. Welcome to Bournemouth anytime. Great show. Brilliant. Cheers for that, Ross. Everyone for joining us this evening. It's been great. Big game tomorrow, and we will not have a lineups live, but Back of the Net are doing a live watch along, so you can head over that. A collaboration with Ollie. There will be a Cherries extra time fan reaction straight after the game, about 20 minutes. I said straight after the game because if there's extra time and penalties, remember. So about 20 minutes after the game, whenever it finishes. But yeah, enjoy the rest of your evening. From me, Jason and Ross, you've been watching Cherries Red Army, this match preview. We'll see you on the next video. Up the Cherries.